What's interesting about the surprises of parenthood is that they're surprises where you like knew they were coming. It's hard to explain because there's nothing about parenthood that I think um, caught me totally off guard where I'm like didn't see that coming. But it's sort of I don't know that I can even think of an analogy, but it's things that you intellectually knew were part of parenthood and were going to happen. And then when they happen to you, you're like, oh, that's really what it meant. Like, I guess maybe you're surprised by the depth of it or the nuances of it, or maybe even just surprised that you thought you understood what it meant, but you didn't really understand what it meant till you crossed that threshold and you're in it. And the other part of it is that it's like a subtle surprise that you kind of only see in your looking back, in a sense, because you don't. There's also nothing where it's just like I feel like I'm knocked over by this. There was nothing where it's like out of nowhere. Wow, you just slowly find yourself wading out into it, and then you look back at the shore and you're like, wow, I didn't know I was that far away. There's an analogy. Uh, so so specifically, what were some of the surprises? How have I changed a lot? And you don't realize it till you look back. One surprise is that I like kids. This sounds so terrible. It's like you became a parent and you didn't like kids. It's not that I didn't like kids before. It's just that maybe it's just I feel like there's just certain personalities that are better at being around kids, and maybe also for men it's different. And I was never really around a ton of kids. Like my brothers both had kids before I did, so I was around them and I liked being around them, but I was not around them that often. So I was a little nervous going into it. Like, am I like, are kids gonna just annoy the crap out of me? This is just gonna be, oh man, I wish they would grow up already. But no, like when you have, I mean, at least for me, it's like having my own kids. It's like, oh, yeah, these are great kids. They're actually like human beings. Like you don't segregate them in your mind as being like this totally different group. It's just young humans. And I think before I had kids, I always just sort of thought of thought of them as like this whole different animal in a sense. And maybe I felt afraid of, I don't know, embarrassing myself or something. Maybe like not knowing how to interact with them. Because also, like, just the only times I was around kids was like very infrequently, and it was like their parents were around too. So you always worry, like, am I gonna do or say something that is not right for kids at this age? Like, not like, you know, drop the F bomb or something, but I just mean like developmentally they don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe I'm going too young in my way of approaching them. Uh, I think also as a man, people just don't, unless they know you, like you don't get the opportunity to be around kids as much because people don't trust men around kids because a lot of predators are men, or most of them are. And then you just have this layer of self-consciousness, like I don't want people to think that I am a predator. One time in school, I was studying theater. I was taking a children's theater class, so I had to see a ch- uh, child's play, and so I went to the children's theater by myself to see a play, and they were like looking at me. The box office staff were like, maybe I was reading into it. I don't know, but it just felt like they were really uh, felt odd about me being there. Another thing that kind of surprised me is like, oh, I can handle it. I mean, it goes hand in hand with it, but it's like you hear parents like to complain. Everyone, it's just human to like to complain about whatever you're going through that's mildly inconvenient. We like to blow things out of proportion, and yeah, there are people who go through really difficult uh, periods as parents, but I was always worried like I'm not gonna be able to handle it. You know, all the different things like managing all this new responsibility and just like things like sleep deprivation and discipline and teaching teaching kids what they're supposed to know. But yeah, I can handle it, and it never felt like I was having to learn anything. It was just sort of like naturally like, oh, okay, now I need to do this. And if I didn't know how to do something, or if I needed a little, uh, you know, research, I just Google it, and there's a ton of sites that can kind of like walk you through the specifics of something like how to get your kid to sleep and stuff like that. What kind of schedule should your kid go on? And of course, I'm very lucky that my wife is very structured and stuff like that. So it's like I have that resource there. One of the things that changes you about kids, and it also takes you by surprise, is that you just care a lot less about everything else because suddenly they're your top priority. And that's one of the things that, it's like things like your kids become your number one priority. You love them more than anything in the world. Those are things I knew before, but I guess the surprise is like what that feels like and what that actually, how that happens, because it's not like it just hits you suddenly. Because you hear some people that are like, as soon as I saw my kid, I was like, I totally changed. And maybe that is how I felt and I just don't remember, but it's like a subtle thing, and suddenly you realize, oh, all these other things don't matter. So, specifically like my career in YouTube was so important. Everything about it was like the the biggest thing in my life. And then once I had a kid, then it was like, okay, that actually doesn't matter as much. And and it's good in a way because it's like you don't live and die by these other things. The vicissitudes of whatever your priorities were before that don't affect you in the same way. And maybe I should have backed up and started with saying that I have two kids. My son is 2.5. My daughter is 15 months. So there's something. But they really. It's also fascinating to see like different personalities that emerge very early on. Like the environment hasn't had that much time to influence them, and they're already acting in totally different ways. Um, in addition to caring less about stuff, you also care more about other things. Specifically, you get anxiety about a lot more things. And like I'm the kind of person who never really worried much about the future. Whoa, I kicked my camera. I didn't worry about the future that much. I didn't worry about what was going on in current events. I always just kind of figured, it'll work itself out. And then you have kids, and suddenly it's like, no, it's not going to work itself out. And you just get worried because it's like you don't want to, you don't want your kids to suffer, It's like I can handle it, but I don't want them to go through it. So it just makes you worried about everything that happens. So it's like I was never like plugged into the news or anything before. But I guess, even just a little bit that I consumed, I had to stop because it was just bothering me too much all the time. And I used to make fun of people like that who got bothered by the news. I'm like, it's just the news. Like, what does it matter? Come on, man. Should I straighten the camera out? That was like fortuitous that it went to a canted frame for that one part. You also get more empathy when you become a parent. Your empathy deepens a lot because you start to see your kid in other people, and you just understand like kind of like the struggles of humanity at a different level. Even though you went through it as a child, now seeing a child it's different. Like you, because you want to protect your kids and stuff at all costs, you that sort of bleeds out in everything else. You know, you care so much about your kids and how they feel and whatever, and you just can't help but start to care about other people and then plug yourself into their situations. And part of it is also just, I think, as you gain life experience in different roles, once you enter the role of parenthood, suddenly you can relate to parents in a way you could never do it before. And maybe to kids also, even though you were a kid. Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? You get to see yourself from the outside. And that what's interesting about that is that you start to see yourself, you start to think, whoa, did my parents think this about me? And then that makes you feel kind of bad about yourself. Not like, oh, my kids are, not it's like, my kids are making me feel bad, but it's like, you don't want your kids to feel bad or have anxieties or whatever. And of course, that's just being human. But I can remember seeing my son be a little afraid of something and me being like, oh man, I don't want him to be afraid of anything. I don't want him to have all these issues. And I'm like, but I have way worse issues. And it's like, well, and starting from when I was a teenager, I would get, anxiety and stuff. And it's like, man, were my parents going through the ringer or like, oh man, I don't want my kid to feel that way. And then it makes you want to be better because it's like, it's almost like you want to be better and overcome these things because you want to show your kid, hey, you don't need to succumb to it. You can overcome it because ultimately you don't want them to have to deal with it. Which is a weird thing where it makes you want to be better, not for the reasons you would think. But it also makes you want to be better for the reasons you would think. Because you just want to set a good example and you want your kids to be proud of you, and it's like you, at least for me, I always beat myself up if I feel like I've made some kind of parenting mistake. Oh, I could have done that better. I could have, I don't know, done more for him and been there for her and all kinds of stuff. And it just makes you want to do better all the time. Or maybe it just makes you feel worse about everything you do all the time. Yeah, so that's it. That's how parenthood's changed me. That's the exhaustive list. Nothing else. Thanks for watching.